Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 7. The son of Drona punished. Text 1. Shonaka Vacha Nirgate Narade Sutta Bhagavan Padarayanaha Shuttavam Stat Abhipretam Tata Kemakarot Vipuhu.
Rishi Sonaka asked, O Sutta, the great and transcendently powerful Vyasadeva heard everything from Sri Narad Muni. So after Narad's departure, what did Vyasadeva do?
Text 2. Sutta Vacha Brahmanadyam Saraswatyam Ashrama Pashchimetate Samyak Prasha Iti Prokta Rishinam Satravardhanaha.
Sri Sutta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation, a Samyaprasha, which enlivens transcendental activities of the sages.
Text 3. Tasmin sva ashrame vyaso patari shandamandite asinopa upasprishya praninatya manasvayam.
In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification.
Text 4. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite male apashyat purusham purnam mayam cha tat apashrayam.
Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead along with his external energy, which was under full control.
Text 5. Yaya samhito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manute nartham tatkritam cha pipatyate.
Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries.
Text 6. Anartho pashamam sakshat bhakti yogam adukshaje lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvataham samhitam.
The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service, but the mass of people do not know this. And therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth.
Text 7. Yasyam ve shriyamanayam Krishna parama purushe bhaktir utpatyate pumsaha shokamoha payapaha.
Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service for Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness.
Text 8. Sa samhitam bhagavatim kritva nukramya chatmacham shukam adyapayam asha nivriti niratam munihi.
The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization.
Text 9. Shonaka vacha save nivriti nirataha sarvatropekshipro munihi kasyava brihatim etam atmarama samapyasat.
Sri Sonaka asked, Sutta Goswami, Sri Sukadeva Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature?
Text 10. Sutta vacha atmaramascha muneyo nirgrantha apyurukrame kurvantyahe tukim bhaktim Itam bhuta guno harihi.
Sutta Goswami said, all different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls.
Text 11. Harer guna kshipta matir bhagavan badarayanihi atyagan mahat akyanam nityam vishnu jana priyaha.
Srila Sukadeva Goswami, son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendentally powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus, he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Text 12. Parikshitota rajarser janma karma vilapanam samstam cha panduputranam vakshe Krishna kathodayam.
Sutta Goswami thus addressed the rishis, headed by Sonaka. Now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Sri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage amongst kings, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu.
Text 13 and 14. Yada mrite kaurava shrinjayanam virashvato virakatim gateshu vriktara vidya katapi marsha bhakno rodande dhitarashtraputre bhartu priyam dro niriti sma pashyan Krishna sutanam swapatam hitchiramshi upaharat vipriyameva tasya jugupsitam karma vikarhayanti.
When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimashena, the son of Dronacharya, Asvatthama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered the heads as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least.
Text 15. Mata shishunam nidanam sutanam nishyamagoram paritapyamana tadaratatvash kulakshi tam santvayan aha kirittamali.
Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjuna spoke to her thus.
Text 16. Tata suchaste pramrijami patre yat brahmabandho shira atatyaniha gandiva mukter vishike rupahare tvakramya yachna yasidakta putra.
O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahmana, after beheading him with arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head.
Text 17. Iti priyam valgu vichitra chalpehe sasantavayit vachita mitra sutaha antvadravatam shita ukratanva kapit vajo guru putram ratena.
Arjuna, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Asvatthama, the son of his martial teacher.
Text 18. Tam atpatantam savilakshya durat Kumarahot Vignamanaratena Paratravat Prana Paripsuruvyam Yavat Kamamruta Payatyatakaha.
Asvatthama, the murderer of the princes, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken, just to save his life as Brahma fled in fear from Shiva.
Text 19. Yada sharanam atmanam ekshata shrantavajinam astam brahma shiromene atmatranam dvijatmaha.
When the son of the Brahmana, Asvatthama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, nuclear weapon. Om Tat Sat.
Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Jai Shri Mataji and Prabhu, for a very nice recitation. So let me just get numbers. Make sure everyone's muted. That's good. So my obeisances to all of you dear devotees. Welcome to today's chat session. We continue with our reading and discussion of chapter number 7 of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The chapter is entitled The Son of Drona Punished. And today we will be discussing text number 8. See, I've got the right verse here. Yeah. So we'll begin, as we normally do, with the recitation of the Mangala Charanam prayers to invoke auspiciousness for our gathering today. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadi Shatarine. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So in the fourth chapter, we have read in the third verse, the sages of Naimisharanya, headed up by Shaunaka Rishi, asking Sutta Goswami a question. And they asked, in what period and at what place was this first begun? This meaning the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. From where did Krishna Dvaipanya Vyas, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? So a bit of that history is being recited in these verses 8 to 11. Sa samitam bhagavan vatim sa samhitam bhagavatim kritvanu kramya chatmajam shukham adyapayam asha nivriti niratam muni. Word for word synonyms. Sa, that. Sahitam, Vedic literature. Bhagavatim, in relation to the personality of Godhead. Kritva, having done. Anukramya, by correction and repetition. Cha, and. Atmajam, his own son. Shukam, Shukadev Goswami. Adyapayam, Asha, thought. Nivriti, part of self-realization. Niratam, engaged. Munihi, the sage. Translation. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Shukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. This Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas, or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification, but such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Shukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad Bhagavatam. Amongst mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit, and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world as the king of Bharatvash, he chastised the personality of Kali. According to revealed scriptures and astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5,000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5,000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. There is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. That is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under instruction of Narada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivriti Marg. The path of Pravriti Marg was condemned by Narada. That path is the natural inclination of all conditioned souls. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, of stopping completely the pangs of material existence. So the verse again. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Shukdev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. So, as we mentioned, this verse is giving us insights into the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. When was it spoken? To whom it was spoken? Why it was spoken? And the previous chapter, we've already been discussing this. So this verse and the purport is packed with many important and interesting features. We're trying to pick up some of the highlights. A few words that caught my attention was anukramya. Srila Prabhupada translates in the word-for-word synonyms. Anukramya is by correction and repetition. And in the translation itself, Srila Prabhupada writes, and revising it. So the Bhagavatam that we are receiving has been received from Mahamuni Vyasadeva. And from this word anukramya, we can understand that this Bhagavatam was presented to us by Srila Vyasadeva through great deliberation. Srila Prabhupada once said that every word in the Srimad Bhagavatam is connected to Krishna. There is not a single word that is not connected to Krishna. Sometimes we may struggle to understand this, but at least we can appreciate its statement. Even such a word as cha means hand. But when the great acharyas, when they study the Srimad Bhagavatam, they can give even multiple meanings for such a verse. So through great deliberation, once Srila Prabhupada, while translating Srimad Bhagavatam, one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada about him completing the entire translation and the pace at which Srila Prabhupada is going. And Srila Prabhupada said, yeah, this is not an easy task. Every word that Srila Prabhupada presents, he said, he has to think about it very deeply. And Srila Prabhupada says sometimes he would think about a single word even over 3 days. Why? Just to present it so that we could understand it properly. In this Kali Yuga, people are very prone to misinterpret, to misunderstand, to speculate. So the acharyas, understanding that mood, they have expended great energy and effort in presenting the Srimad Bhagavatam to us. And we see that it started off by Srila Vyasadeva himself, making sure that everything is completely perfect. Amala Purana, the spotless Purana, everything is completely spotless. So we should be very grateful to Srila Vyasadeva. Therefore, sometimes he said before reciting, we recite the verse Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat. We glorify many great personalities, and in that verse we glorify and express gratitude to Srila Vyasadeva. Now, Srila Prabhupada expends quite a bit of time in the purport talking about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, Western scholars and other scholars have presented different views, and there is considerable debate going on about the history of the Srimad Bhagavatam, at least the version that we have received. When was it compiled? What is the chronology of events? And we know within the Bhagavatam itself, in the Bhagavatam, it is said, the verse, Krishna Swadhamo Bhagate Dharma Gyanadvisaha Kalo Nasta Drishamesha Puranarko Dinoditaha. That this Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled just after the disappearance of Lord Krishna, when he was ascending to his abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Krishna Swadhamo Bhagate Dharma Gyanadvi Saha. So we know that is one fact. It was compiled just after the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Then there are other events within the Bhagavatam. We know it is Sutta Goswami reciting the Bhagavatam to the sages of Naimisharanya. Then we hear about Shukadeva Goswami reciting the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. And then we hear in this verse Srila Vyasadeva reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami. So there are many events happening in place in the Bhagavatam, all describing the recitation of the Bhagavatam. So what is the chronology? What is the chronology? What are the time scales? So I would like to share something that gives a little insight into this matter. When was Srimad Bhagavatam compiled? So we hear from the Bhagavat Mahatmya in the Padma Purana, Uttarakanda. Shaunaka Rishi asked, O Sutta Goswami, when did Shukadeva Goswami recite the Bhagavatam to Parikshit, Gorkhana to Dundukari, and the Kumaras to Narad Muni? So I won't go to the history of Gokarna and Dundukari. It's described in the Matsya Purana. Narad Muni, once Srimad Bhagavatam was recited by the Kumaras to Sri Narad Muni. So at one stage during the recitation, Narad Muni asks the Kumaras, is there any example or is there any history of a ghost hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and becoming liberated? And the Kumara said, yes, there is one incident. And he narrated the incident of Dundukari and Gokarna. That is a long history. We'll see. If there's time in today's session, maybe we can give a bit more detail, but I just want to focus a bit more about the history of the Bhagavatam. So Sutta Goswami replied, about 30 years after Lord Krishna's departure to his abode, on the 9th day of the bright fortnight in the month of Bhadra, Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam to Parikshit. 200 years later, in the month of Ashada, on the 9th day of the bright fortnight, Gokarna recited Bhagavatam to Dundukari. 30 years later, in the month of Kartik, on the 9th day of the bright fortnight, the Kumaras recited it to Narad Muni. So there's a lot going on in terms of time scales. So just to give you an idea, even Even Prabhupada talks about the Ramayana in the purport, the Ramayana being compiled before, or Mahabharata being compiled before the Bhagavatam. So just some dates. So BC means before Christ, and AD means after death. So approximately 3,150 years before the appearance of Jesus Christ, which is how the Western calendars are spoken about. That was the time roughly of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we know that Lord Krishna, he was the charioteer of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So shortly after that, and you'll see it's a smaller number than 3125 because we're working towards BC now. On around 18th of February, 3102, Lord Krishna left this planet. And the moment the Lord left this planet, then Kali Yuga began. That's when Kali Yuga began. And it is estimated by historians that Lord Krishna was present on this planet for around 173 years. So as stated in the Bhagavad Mahatmya, 30 years after the disappearance of Lord Krishna, Shukdev Goswami, which is in 3072, Shukadev Goswami spoke on the Bhadra Navami. He spoke the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. We know it was spoken over 7 days. So that is roughly how long after the disappearance of Lord Krishna, Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukdev Goswami. And then, we've been referring to 2 historical events. Gokarna, speaking the Bhagavatam to Dundukari. And if we have time, we can go a bit more into that. And then 30 years later, the Kumaras recited it to Narad Muni during the month of Kartik. And then around 2000 BC, which is roughly about 1,150 years after the Battle of Kurukshetra, Sutta Goswami recited Bhagavatam to the sages at Naimisharanya. And then 1,000 years after that event, the Mahabharata was compiled, and about 500 years after that, Ramayana was compiled. And it is explained that about 900 years, so that's what, another 500, 1,400 years later, Vyasadeva finished compiling the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam. So where does these dates come from? That is the automatic question people will ask. So the first and the last 3 dates, we as the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we get this from the introduction of Sri Krishna Samhita by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And in the Sri Krishna Samhita of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives the date of the writing of Srimad Bhagavatam as being around 900 AD. And in the opinion of modern scholars, and he goes on to give very foolproof evidences regarding this. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself, he put a lot of effort into writing this introduction, and he leaves it up to the reader to accept it or not. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, the father of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he foresaw that some people's faith is weak, And if they did not understand the chronology, they could not really grasp the dating. And Western scholars are very prone to use dating to discredit literatures. He has put great effort into giving us this historic history of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he writes that while trying to figure out the date of compiling of the Bhagavatam as per the modern scholars, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, now we will consider the modern scholars' view on the date of the appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam, the jewel of all scriptures. Not understanding our statements, third-grade people may lose all faith and consider it a recent work. Therefore, they should read this section. Meaning, when we get caught up in reading different scholars' interpretations, they may give a different view of Srimad Bhagavatam being a very recent work. But as you can see by the dates I've shown above, Srimad Bhagavatam is a very ancient work. And we also know that Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken eternally. There is versions of the Bhagavatam that's referred to that's 200,000 verses. The Bhagavatam that we've received is 18,000 verses. I also, out of interest, I was recently, and I can share this with anybody who wants it to be shared, one devotee scholar has written a PhD thesis on the antiquity of Bhagavatam. And I was just reading this paper, and it's very interesting. He looks at it from so many different angles, from the angles of epistemology principles, you know, scholars in history, philosophy, and sociology. He looks at it from the point of the different places mentioned, the river Saraswati and the other rivers. He looks at it from the point of astrology. He looks at it from the point of dating. And he looks at the Bhagavatams from many, many scholarly point of view, from a very scholarly angle, part of a PhD thesis, and researching it from very many angles of the different scriptures, from historical books. And more or less, he comes to the conclusions that I've just presented here. And I'm happy to share anyone who's got an appetite for really getting into this. And if you be challenged sometimes, you can always refer to this, into these theses. What else shall we say about this verse? Srila Prabhupada talks about the path of Nivriti marg and Pavriti marg, the path of enjoyment and the path of renunciation. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivriti marg. So we know that there are many Puranas. There's Puranas, 18 Puranas, 6 in the mode of sort of not in the mode of ignorance, but for those in the mode of ignorance, 6 for those in the mode of passion, and those 6 for those in the mode of goodness. So based on the mentality of the people, you know, there are 2 paths, the path of Pravriti marg and the path of Nivriti marg, and just like the Vedas explain Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha, trying to capture those people who are inclined towards sense gratification. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is spotless. As Prabhupada says that actually this book is meant for the Paramahamsas. Hamsa means swan, and Para means the great. So those swan-like devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam is ultimately meant for the swan-like liberated personalities. But Srimad Bhagavatam, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, it is such a great, it's such a profound literature that even those people who are worldly, even those who are engaged in sense gratification, they also can read Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is so potent that it will cure even the worldly persons engaged in sense gratification. It will cure them of the material disease. So this is the greatness of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Paramahamsas, for the great devotees, there's no other literature than Srimad Bhagavatam. They simply relish. And for those who are materialistic people, worldly people, when they read Srimad Bhagavatam, it just dissipates, completely dissipates all the pangs that come from worldly association. So how great is this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam? So that's a little bit of history for you all, dear devotees. I guess I'll stop here and see if anyone's got any comments or questions or corrections. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, my Dandavat Pranams. Please accept my humble obeisances. This is Mamta here, Prabhuji. Just a question regarding, obviously, it's very nice to see all those dates which have come up. Absolutely wonderful. I was just wondering, why did it take so many years for someone to compile all the cantos of Bhagavatam by Vasudeva? It was like many thousands of years since Krishna had come. So, because I think Krishna, after he passed away, then Ramayana came even after Mahabharata, even though Ramayana was before the Mahabharata when we take the Treta Yuga. And looking at it, because there's so many thousands and thousands of years have passed away, and then Vyasadeva came and wrote. So I know he would have had this enlightenment to write it, but how would you otherwise tell that all this, what has been written, is authentic? I believe it is authentic, but how would we tell other people?
You mean how can we verify?
How can we, yes, Prabhuji, how can we tell? Because if we show these dates to other people, then materialistic people obviously will not believe anything. And then comes the thing of now other religions coming up, Christianity and Buddhism and whatever, Islam and everything. They will come and they will try to say, but I know that we are the oldest of all the scriptures. And even to, I do not know, like how Vyasadeva is for us, then for other religions, they'll say their gurus are also like that, So how do we tell them that ours is very authentic?
By giving the history that I've just given, and I refer to you to this paper. This paper does exactly what you are referring to, alluding to, where you look at it from historical records, you look at it from astrological records, you look at it from like the river Saraswati when it was when it was dried up, and so many aspects. Also, we should understand about the writing of scriptures. There was no need to write the scriptures down for a long time. Because people just understood it. There was no need to write it. It's just that, as I was explaining at the start of Kali Yuga, and as Kali Yuga progressed, then the ability of people to take in and fully understand something was decreasing, and then it had to be written down. I still saw Emma Mataji wrote here, Ganeshji described the Srimad Bhagavatam as Vyasa was speaking it. Yes. So we need to sort of make the distinction between speaking and writing. So in a lot of the dates here, it says Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukdev Goswami to Parikshit. Bhagavatam was spoken by Golkanta to Dundukari. Bhagavatam was spoken by Kumaras to Narad Muni. And then it says Bhagavatam was written. So there is there's the speaking, and then there's the writing also. But to come back to the essence of your question, these dates, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur puts it very nicely in one of the statements I just read out. You know, there are those people that will naturally be skeptical, and the skepticals will focus on those books, and they will maybe have a lack of faith. But those who are devotees, we just accept it. So, I mean, we can give them the evidence, and I said there was this thesis written by a scholarly devotee that looks at it and verifies the authenticity of the dates. But yeah, ultimately, you know, people either accept or don't accept. So we shouldn't. I've been presenting Bhagavatam for many years now. I've not met anyone so far who's really challenged the history of the Bhagavatam. It's probably more when you go into scholarly circles. But then again, we can just refer to what I was talking to about this paper here.
Thank
Okay,
you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vrindavan, Chandra, Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranams, Vishwapad. Thank you for a very, very wonderful class. That's the first time I've actually seen all those dates presented like that. Actually, it's quite mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused, as Mataji was just asking as well. I mean, Ramayana was compiled by Valmiki at the time of Ramchandra or Love Kush to Love Kush. So how do we, is this Tulsidas's Ramayana we're referring to as being 500 BC, or are we that, no, that, because Tulsidas was only about 800 years ago, so that 800 years ago. So it can't even be that one. Because the compilation of Ramayana was by Valmiki, not by Vyasamuni.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Prabhu, I didn't give much focus in my presentation for today to look at the 1000 BC and the 500 BC on Mahabharata and Ramayana. We could probably dig into a bit more into that. But
Okay, no, I was just confused, so
yeah.
sorry, apologies.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to answer your question, but we can look into that.
If you could share the link to that paper, it would be nice. It was it really looks like an interesting bit of research that's been done. So thank you for sharing all that with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Vyasadeva says, after many, many pious births, one is attracted and drawn to the Bhagavatam. So in that case, you were saying about materialistic people. I am assuming we are not so materialistic, but very materialistic people. Are they really drawn to the Bhagavatam?
I think the point Vyasadeva is making, even if they are not drawn to it, but if they give, as Prabhupada said, they give oral reception to it. Like sometimes we distribute Bhagavatams to people. We have to work hard to convince them to take Bhagavatam. We meet people who are, I mean, I met one person recently. I said, will you take it? And I didn't have to say much. He said, yes, I will take it. They were just drawn to it. But there are some people you have to work really hard to convince them to take the Bhagavatam. So the point being, not so much about them being materialistic people being drawn to it, but they're simply giving oral reception to it. They saying, okay, let me read. You know, I invested 175 pounds, or I've seen the Bhagavatam, many people are talking about it, maybe out of curiosity, or of the desire to maybe even challenge, they will approach the Bhagavatam. So yeah, there are some people after many births, they are drawn to Bhagavatam naturally because of their previous connections with the Bhagavatam. But there are some people, like Prabhupada once he was looking at his disciple and he says, some of you all are eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya. and some of you all are simply recipients of mercy. So the same way for the Bhagavatam, Mataji, it's a bit of both, but as long as a person just gives oral reception, and I think if you read the story of Dundukari, he wasn't even expressly trying to hear the Bhagavatam. It just happened to, and he got purified. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So I think today we have a bhajan being sung by Emma Mataji. And let me just get my act together. Sorry, I was a bit, I know I was seeing the Mataji is going to be singing. What bhajan are you singing, Emma Mataji?
The Gopi Geet. The
Oh,
Gopi
yes,
Geet.
Gopi Geet. Oh, Gopi Geet. Yes, you're singing the Gopi Geet.
And Prabhuji, Shailaja Mataji will be sharing the lyrics on the screen. So can we ask Shailaja Mataji please to share the lyrics? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Mamta Mataji, are you ready to read the English translation, please?
Yes, Mataji. This is the same
Thank
Veda. This is the chapter 31, isn't it, of Canto 10?
I'm not sure. I think so.
Yes, Rose.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Let me know if my screen is visible.
It is, yes.
It is visible. So can I start, Prabhuji?
Yes, please do.
Hare Krishna. My Dandavat pranams to everyone. This is the Gopi Geet, the chapter 31 of Canto 10, the Gopi songs of separation. The Gopis said, "O beloved, your birth in the land of Vraja has made it exceedingly glorious, and thus Indira, the goddess of fortune, always resides here. It is only for your sake that we, your devoted servants, maintain our lives. We have been searching everywhere for you, so please show yourself to us. O Lord of love, in beauty, your glance excels the whirl of the finest, most perfectly formed lotus within the autumn pond. O bestower of benedictions, you are killing the maid servants who have given themselves to you freely, without any price. Isn't this murder? O greatest of personalities, you have repeatedly saved us from all kinds of danger, from poisoned water, from the terrible man-eater Agha, from the great rains, from the wind demon, from the fiery thunderbolt of Indra, from the bull demon, and from the son of Maya Danava. You are not actually the son of Gopi Yashoda, O friend, but rather the indwelling witness in the hearts of all embodied souls. Because Lord Brahma prayed for you to come and protect the universe, you have now appeared in the Satvata dynasty. O best of the Vrishnis, your lotus-like hand, which holds the hand of the goddess of fortune, grants fearlessness to those who approach your feet out of fear of material existence. O lover, please place that wish-fulfilling lotus hand on our heads. O you who destroy the suffering of Raja's people, O hero of all women, your smile shatters the false pride of your devotees. Please, dear friend, accept us as your maidservants and show us your beautiful lotus face. Your lotus feet destroy the past sins of all embodied souls who surrender to them. Those feet follow after the cows in the pastures and are the eternal abode of the goddess of fortune. Since you once put those feet on the hoods of the great serpent Kalia, please place them upon our breasts and tear away the lust in our hearts. O lotus-eyed one, your sweet voice and charming words, which attract the minds of the intelligent, are bewildering us more and more. Our dear hero, please revive your maidservants with the nectar of your lips. The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly, those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. Your smiles, your sweet loving glances, the intimate pastimes and confidential talks we enjoyed with you, all these are auspicious to meditate upon, and they touch our hearts. But at the same time, O deceiver, they very much agitate our minds. Dear master, dear lover, when you leave the cowherd village to herd the cows, our minds are disturbed with the thought that your feet, more beautiful than a lotus, will be pricked by the spiked husks of grain and the rough grass and plants. At the end of the day, you repeatedly show us your lotus face, covered with dark blue locks of hair and thickly powdered with dust. Thus, O hero, you arouse lusty desires in our minds. Your lotus feet, which are worshipped by Lord Brahma, fulfill the desires of all who bow down to them. They are the ornament of the earth. They give the highest satisfaction, and in times of danger, they are the appropriate object of meditation. O lover, O destroyer of anxiety, please put those lotus feet upon our breasts. O hero, kindly distribute to us the nectar of your lips, which enhance conjugal pleasure and vanquishes grief. That nectar is thoroughly relished by your vibrating flute and makes people forget any other attachment. When you go off to the forest during the day, a tiny fraction of a second becomes like a millennium for us because we cannot see you. And even when we can eagerly look upon your beautiful face, so lovely with its adornment of curly locks, our pleasure is hindered by our eyelids, which were fashioned by the foolish creator. Dear Achyuta, you know very well why we have come here. Who but a cheater like you would abandon young women who come to see him in the middle of the night, enchanted by the loud song of his flute? Just to see you, we have completely rejected our husbands, children, and sisters, brothers, and other relatives. Our minds are repeatedly bewildered as we think of the intimate conversations we had with you in secret. Feel the rise of lust in our hearts and remember your smiling face, your loving glances, and your broad chest, the resting place of the goddess of fortune. Thus, we experience the most severe hankering for you. O beloved, your all auspicious appearance vanquishes the distress of those living in Vraja's forests. Our minds long for your association. Please give to us just a bit of that medicine, which counteracts the disease in your devotees' hearts. O dearly beloved, your lotus feet are so soft that we place them gently on our breasts, fearing that your feet will be hurt. Our life rests only in you. Our minds, therefore, are filled with anxiety that your tender feet might be wounded by pebbles as you roam about on the forest path. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, Mataji, for a wonderful reading. So I'll start now. Gopyo Vacha Jayati Dehikam Janmana Braja Shayati Indira Shashwatatrahi Dayati Drishyatam Dikshutavaka Tvai Drita Shava Tvam Vijinvate शरदुदाशये साधुजातस शरशिजोदरा श्रीमुसादृशा सुरतनाथ ते शौकदाशिका वरदनिघ्नतो नेह किं वदः विषजलाप्ययाद् व्यालराक्षसात् वरसमारुतात् वाद्यतानल वृषमयात्मजात् विश्वतो भयात् ऋषभते वयं रक्षितामुः न खलु गोपिका नन्दनो भवान् अखिल देहिनाम् अन्तरात्मदे विखनसातितो विश्वगुप्तये सखौ देवान् शाश्वतं कुले वरचिता भयं वृष्णिदूर्यते चरणपीयूषं संसृते भय करसरारुहं कान्तकामतां शिरसि देहिना श्रीकराग्रहं व्रजजनातिहं वीरयोषितं निजजनास्मया द्वांशनास्मिता भज सखे भव किङ्करी स्मनो जलरुहाननं चारुदर्शया प्रणतदेहिना पापकर्षणं तृणचरूनगं श्रीनिकेतनं फणिपरन्पितं ते पदं भुजं कृणुकुचेषुना कृन्दिरिच्छयम् मधुरया गिरा वाल्गुवाक्यया बुधमनोज्ञया पुष्करेक्षणा विधिकरीति मां वीरमुख्यते अदरसीधुनाप्यायाश्वनः तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिदीदितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदात्मतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः प्रहर्षितं प्रिया प्रेमवीक्षणं विहरणान चन्ते ध्यानमङ्गलम् रहसि संवितो यारिधि स्पृशा कुहकनो मना शोभायन्त हि चलश्रियद्व्रज चारयन् पशु नलिनसुन्दरं नाथ ते पदम् शीलत्रिनाकुरे सीदति तिना कलिलतं मना कान्त गच्छति दिनपरीक्षये नीलकुण्टले वनरुहाननं बिभ्रदूरितम् अवर्तं गणरजास्वलं दाशयामो मनसि नाः स्मरं वीरयच्छसि प्रणतकामदं पद्मजाचितं धरणिमन्दनं वेयदापदी चरणपङ्कजं शान्तमां च ते रमणनास्तनेष्वम् अर्पयादिहं सुरतवर्धनां शोकनाशनं स्वरितवेणुना शुस्तुचुम्बितम् इतररागवीष्मा रानं नर्ननं वितरवीरनास्ते धार अमृतम् अतति यद्भवान् अहनिकाननं त्रुटियुगायते त्वम् अपश्यतम् कुटिलकुण्टलं श्रीमुखाच ते जदविदक्षतं पक्ष्मकृदृशम् पतिसुतान्यवान् अतिविलङ्घ्यते अन्ति अच्युत गता गतिविदस्तवो गीतमोहिता कितवयोषिता कास्त्यजेन्निशि रहसि संविदं रीचयोदयं प्रहसिताननं प्रेम वीक्षणं बृहदौ श्रियो वीक्ष्य धामते मुहुरति स्पृहा मुह्यते मनः व्रजवनानुकं भजनोकासं व्रजवनुक्ष I lost that there. व्रजवनाक्षणं व्याक्तिरङ्गते वृजनहन्त्यलं विश्वमङ्गलं त्यजमनक्षणास्त्वप्तस्रत्मनं स्वजनरीदृजं यान्निषूदनं यत्ते सुजात चरणाम्बुरुहं स्तनेषु भीतासने प्रियदधीमहि कर्कशेषु तेनातविम् अतसि तद्व्यातते न किं स्वीत कर्पदिवे भ्रमतीति भवदयुषं नः। गोपी गीत की जय. Hare Krishna. Sorry about the mistakes. Sorry.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Emma Mataji. That was beautiful. It's Gopi Gita is something very special, especially for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. This section of the Bhagavatam. Thank you very much for on this auspicious day for singing it so beautifully, and thank you for reciting Mataji. So, dear devotees, I think it's an appropriate time to complete our session for today. We wish you all a very successful and joyous Kartik Vrat, and we will see you again tomorrow. Hare Krishna, All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to your service. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha. Jai Shri
Thank you, dear devotee.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much, Prabhuji. Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.